Birdy's Halloween, a spooky story dedicated to Stephanie and Matthew. Hello, this is Richard, and this is the latest episode in our series about a boy called Jake, whose best friend is a talking crow called Birdy. And to find out how and why we are dedicating it to Stephanie and Matthew, listen at the end of the story, and I'll tell you some of our news. Jake's mum always did the best and the scariest Halloween face painting. When she had finished with Jake and his sister, they both looked like proper little ghouls, with fangs and stitches, scarlet gashes and wonky eyes. Jake went up to his room to wait until it was dark enough to go trick-or-treating. He had been sitting on the bed for about 5 minutes when he heard a familiar tap, tap, tap. "Birdy!" he exclaimed, and he went to open the window. His best friend, a black crow, was perched in his favourite spot on the sill. He opened his beak and said, "Quoth the raven nevermore." "What does that mean?" asked Jake. "Oh, it's a bit of a spooky old poem," said Birdy. "Well, it didn't spook me," said Jake. "Talking of which, do you think I look scary?" Birdy put his face on one side and considered, while Jake pulled his top 3 scariest faces. "Well, I suppose you might look sort of scary to some people," said the bird at length. Jake was disappointed. "Is that all?" he said. "Wouldn't you be scared enough to give me some sweets?" "Nah," said Birdy. "If you want people to hand stuff over, you've got to scare them good and proper. That's what King Henry always used to say, and he was too right." "Well, what if I do it like this?" asked Jake. "What if I jump out of a shadow and go, wah?" "Nope, won't do," said Birdy. "Not at all scary. Look, I'm a bird, and I'm supposed to be easily frightened. But I'm not one bit. What you need to do is scare people out of their tiny minds, and then they'll hand over every sweet they've got in the house. And if you say that isn't enough, they will run down to the shop and spend all their money until you say you are satisfied." "Well, how am I supposed to do that? I'm just a kid." "You need help," concluded Birdy. And when Jake looked downcast, he added soothingly, "Don't worry. I'll help you put the frighteners on your neighbours because I'm your friend. Wait 5 minutes, then come out into the garden and I'll introduce you to someone who will sort all this out for you." 5 minutes felt like a century, but when it was time, Jake ran downstairs and out into the garden. It was dark and he could not see much. "Birdy, are you there?" "I'm here and there's someone I'd like you to meet," said Birdy. "But don't scream or run off or anything because she isn't going to hurt you." "Right," said Jake. But he felt pretty scared already, and that was before what happened next. In front of his eyes, a sort of misty shape started to appear, and it gradually took the shape of a lady. Soon he could see that she was dressed in a long velvety gown, and that she wore lots of pearly strings, including around the edges of a cap. She had reddish hair and a slightly long face. Do I know you?" stuttered Jake. The lady did not reply, but Birdy said, "Jake, the correct thing to do now is to kneel on one knee before her royal ladyship, Queen Anne Boleyn." Jake did as he was told. He looked up and asked, "Are you for real?" "Yes, I'm for real," said Queen Anne. "Didn't you know I've been haunting your house for several 100 years? There's a tunnel that connects your cellar to the palace." "No, I didn't know that," said Jake. "But, excuse me, your Royal Majesty, if you don't mind me saying so, even though you're a ghost, you don't seem very scary. I mean, You're a nice sort of ghost, aren't you? Well, I can be scary if I want to, said Anne. How about this for a freaky trick? And so saying, she held her head in her hands, lifted it off her shoulders, and placed it under her left arm. Yes, agreed Jake. That is properly scary. Scary enough to persuade people to hand over some sweets? Asked Birdy. Yes, that will do the trick, I should think. It was not much later when Mum called for Jake. A big crowd of kids and their parents were gathering, all dressed up as freaks, ghosts, vampires, ghouls and monsters, and all in a great state of noisy excitement. And that was before they had got sugared up. Anne Boleyn slipped in among them and did not look at all out of place. But whenever it was Jake's turn to go and knock on a door, she stood behind him. And you know what? He received so many sweets that he could have spent the entire year munching nothing else. Only his mum and dad hid most of them because they were afraid he would make himself sick. And that was Birdy's Halloween, written for Storynory by Bertie and read by me, Richard. In case you didn't know, Anne Boleyn was the second wife of Henry VIII, who had 6 wives in all, though not at the same time. He lived part of the time at Hampton Court Palace on the River Thames, and in this story, Jake's house is not far away. Now for some news. We've set up a Patreon account, which helps you support Storynory with donations small or large. We've set out some nice rewards for supporters and set ourselves some goals for making Storynory even better. It's early days, and we hope to make both the rewards and the goals even more exciting. Well, almost as soon as we had set up our Patreon page, our first Patreon pledge came rolling in. So Bertie and Storynory would like to say a big thank you to Stephanie and her 7-year-old son, Matthew, for setting the ball rolling. They tell us that their favourite story is quite possibly The Samurai and the Tea Master from Japan, and that they also enjoy the world stories and myths, including the ones from the Philippines. Well, thank you very much. Also, we'd like to send a long overdue thanks to our existing supporters, including Millicent Turk from Minnesota, who is one of our many grown-up listeners. Also, huge thank yous to Janine Kate, David Barnett, David Tugas, Stephen McMillan, Julia Gage, Gina Herman, Henny Nauman Kane, Sarah Gupta, and families. Sorry we haven't mentioned everyone who has helped us over the years, but drop us a line and we'll give you a shout-out. In the meantime, if you'd like to check out our Patreon page, you can find the link on storynory.com. For now, from me, Richard, have a super spooky Halloween!